sure you've gotten used to seeing Mike in the seat that I'm actually in today. Mike, how does it feel being on the other side of the interview for a change?
Well, Leanne, over the years with you, we're kind of used to that. So it's either you or me, but it's great to be here. It's always great to talk to people. It's tough times, but if I can make that slight difference this morning, and fortunately, I've been exposed to many amazing people over the last few weeks during this daunting period of our time. So, and I'll share some of that. Of course, I've been on many radio interviews, television interviews. I've had the privilege of meeting the experts around the country and around the world, of helping these mercurial business owners and entrepreneurs get through this crisis, and to try and turn this crisis into an opportunity. I know sometimes it's a tough statement to make, but that's who we are as entrepreneurs and business owners. We're resilient, we are passionate, and we kind of, and what I've seen over the last few weeks is an incredible amount of positivity and resilience coming out.
Yeah, incredibly inspiring stories we've actually seen. Mike, today you're going to be speaking about that internal fire. And I know as entrepreneurs, it's just within so many business owners and entrepreneurs, but when tough times hit, we find that internal fire can also take a knock. Before we go into that, I just want to find out from your perspective, what do you mean when you refer to that internal fire?
Leanne, over the years as an entrepreneur, and I know many of our listeners and attendees today, the pandemic has put us kind of all in the same boat. Whereas generally in life, we kind of arrive at that point of adversity at different times, and I always say, it's my turn now, and maybe next week it's your turn. And but crazy enough as it is, it's kind of everybody's turn in some ways. And no matter what sector you're in right now, some will be negatively affected more than others. Of course, a restaurant will be more affected than an online business, as we know, Leanne. But it's really about that incredible power within, to keep going through trying times, to try and seek out that passion, that perseverance, that persistence, to keep going. And I think what it allows us to do is really be calm, be positive, and extract the best that we can, so that we can keep moving. Because the key trait of an entrepreneur is it belongs to very few people, that ability to bounce back positively after adversity. And of course, how do we extract that? And if you look at a key entrepreneur, the mercurial entrepreneur, I was talking to some experts around the world the last few days, Lee, and what is coming out now, some of the most successful companies of the future are being born right now. The likes of Microsoft and Apple and Jack Ma's, Alibaba, because there's people out there now who are taking every negative aspect away from their being and replacing it with positives, so they can seize these opportunities now and move forward now. So when the good times come back, we get out of that starting block quickly with power. And so that's what we've got to, because we don't have a choice, Leanne. We don't have a choice right now but to do that. We have two choices: to curl up in a corner and cry, or to dig deep and come back and build that foundation for the beyond.
Absolutely, Mike. And just hearing that, I think people can see the internal fire actually in you as it is. Just to find out where all you listeners are today, I'm just going to run a poll quickly in the chat. And basically, it's asking you, what is the state of your internal fire at the moment? So, you know what, be completely honest. I'm starting that poll now, and let's see where you are today. It's sometimes really hard to keep that fire burning when you keep getting knocked down. And I can see the responses are coming in. Everyone, please go and vote. We're going to finish that poll pretty quickly so we can move on. But yeah, it's going to give us a good indication of where you as business owners are right now and what you are feeling. Okay, just going to give it a few more seconds to go. All right. And it looks
I like
like,
that from Graham, still burning.
so the options are, yeah, it's strong and raging. Then the next option is it's lit but needs some fuel. The next option is there's a flicker, but it's close to going out. And then the last option is being hit so hard by the storm, I feel like I'm trying to light a fire in the rain. I think a lot of business owners can feel like that at this point. All right, so let's end that poll. All right, and we see the winner is actually, it's lit, but it needs some fuel. So I think you are all in the perfect position today. All right, Mike, just moving on. Before we go, you've mentioned a few of the tips and a few of the qualities that you need that is displayed in that internal fire. But I would really like to kind of delve deep into your entrepreneurial journey, because I know that everything you speak about, you have learned firsthand. So Mike, how did you start? How did your whole entrepreneurial journey start?
You know, Leanne, I've kind of always been an entrepreneur. You know, I got it from my dad. He's like you, he was a graphic designer, and he always worked for himself. He never employed anybody, but from a young age, you know, he gave me that entrepreneur. He always said to me, Mike, you've got two routes in life. You can be an entrepreneur, or you can climb the corporate ladder. Not one is better than the other. It just depends what you want out of life. And I realized at an early age, that's really what I wanted to do. And of course, I went to the army. I did some amazing things. I was a professional diver up on the West Coast. And, you know, some of my friends traveled the world. I decided to do something different after school. And that, you know, I went to the army. I was a Navy diver, and I did some really phenomenal things. And then, you know, some people take that 2-year sabbatical where they go and work in pubs around the world.
Hi, Mike.
I didn't do that.
To have lost you.
Are you there, Leanne? Are you there, Leanne?
Did you lose me and I lost you? Is that what happened?
Are you back? Are you back, Leanne?
Yeah, I can see you, Mike.
Right. Yeah, and I think that my entrepreneurial vision started at a young age, and so I decided when I was very young that that's what I wanted to do. And from an early age, I always realized, Mike, you probably have to fail 1,000 times, but I didn't want to ever land up on my deck chair one day and look back, if only I did this and if only I did that. And I realized I was prepared to take that risk. But Leanne, I always had that premise behind that risk. Whatever obstacle I hit, whatever dip I went through, whatever crash I went through, as long as I learned something from that, I came out of that stronger, and I was better off. And in that way, I never minded taking that risk. I never minded hitting the wall. As long as I changed direction, learned from that error, and moved forward in a better way than I was before. And that's why risk taking was always okay for me. It wasn't about arrogance. It was about that self-belief. That, because you see, from a young age, I always knew, now this might sound pretty arrogant, but it's not meant to be. I always knew that I would always arrive where I want to be one day. It was just a matter of time. And I would do whatever I could to achieve that. And that was the premise from the outset that I did. And of course, I went on to, and I'm sure you're going to bring that up. You know, I don't know if you know, Leanne, you've been with us 9 years in September this year, just to put some reflection back on our partnership we have together. But it is, and I think that's really what it was all about for me. And I did. En route, I had some spectacular failures. And I don't call them failures, Leanne, I call them obstacles en route. I call them dips in process. Because you only fail when you stop trying. You only fail when you throw in that towel. Now, I know that there's many business owners out there right now who are ready to throw in that towel. And I'm saying to them right now, you might need to change direction. You might lose your business, and hopefully not, but you have you. And I'll tell you something, Leanne. Some years ago, I was watching a TV program, and we all know Anderson Cooper on CNN. And I was looking at him, and he was standing down south in the United States, and in front of him was this man and his wife and his 3 little children. And Anderson Cooper said to him, "Cheapers, man, you've lost everything." And he said, "No, you don't understand. I have everything. I have my wife and my 3 children." And you see, those are the kind of things that I've learned in my life, that, you know, embracing adversity is imperative to achieving success. If we think there's a perfect curve to the top, we're completely mistaken. We have to embrace failure, but we have to learn from failure. So I learned that from an early time in my life. And then, of course, I had an amazing father who gave me that entrepreneurial, that guidance towards entrepreneurship. And I kind of, I never went to university, and you know, I didn't have that kind of money to do that, but it didn't matter to me. You know, I was born with an entrepreneurial spirit, and I was encouraged to become an entrepreneur. And the point is for me is that I knew what was coming. I knew it wasn't going to be a perfect rise to the top, but I always knew one thing, that I would never give up trying.
Wow, that is an unbelievable spirit, and I think a lot of you listening probably can relate to that and share in that. You kind of narrowed it down to something really important, Mike, and that is knowing what is really important to you. And you know, just what you said about having everything, your family, your children. I think that as a motivating factor is something that you as business owners and entrepreneurs need to constantly connect to. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And that'll then stoke that fire. Mike, you mentioned that you're not scared of failure, and that from an early age you actually understood that was just part of the entrepreneurial journey. I'm going to put another poll in our chat right now for just to see how you are all and how you all see failure. So here goes the poll. Let's see how our attendees feel about failure. I know personally, I didn't always have it in me. I think I was extremely scared of failure. And when I did fail, I would beat myself up about it. And then I think when I met you and when we started working together, your view really inspired me to look at failure differently, and how it's such an incredible opportunity to learn, because you actually learn a lot more from failing than what you do from succeeding. It's like what I've learned from failure, I will never forget again. You know, whereas those successes, you kind of forget how you actually achieved that in the first place. So it can be in you, and it can also be learned. All right, so let's see how people are viewing failure. I'm going to end the poll quickly. All right, it seems like our winner is I'm scared of it, but understand its value. We still have a high percentage, 36%, that fully embrace it and bounce back quickly because they know it's a good teacher. So that is that's a wonderful thing to see in all of you attending today, because that's going to pull you through this. All right, Mike. So you've mentioned failure, but now we want the juicy stuff. We want the good stuff. You know, what are some of your most spectacular failures, and how did you bounce back from them?
Well, you know, in my early years, Leanne, when I came out of my adventures, my diving experiences I had, and you know, I was in the Cape Town region, and I had some fishing connections, and I had some contacts up in Johannesburg, and I thought, you know what, and someone said to me in Hout Bay, Mike, why don't we get some fresh fish up to Gauteng and distribute fresh fish? He said that there's nobody distributing fresh fish in the Sandton area lunchtime. So if you're sitting in a restaurant, let's for example in Sandton, and you see a billboard outside there, fresh fish caught this morning, I mean, that's pretty attractive. So what I decided to do, I had my contact up in Johannesburg, and within about a week, I'd hired one of these huge aeroplanes, the Boeing, it's almost like a cargo plane, and we filled it with ice, and we transported an enormous amount of fish on one flight up to Gauteng, to Johannesburg International. And at the airport, of course, I had some cooler trucks waiting for me. And yes, we delivered. We delivered over 150 restaurants throughout the greater Johannesburg region. And we were in big business, and we knew that we could sustain this every day. But Leanne, the next morning, we got some phone calls coming through fast and furious. And you see, as they say, stick to the knitting, stick to what you do best, and outsource the rest. So I learned, so we got some angry people phoning us. What we had done is that we had poisoned half of Johannesburg, because what we didn't realize was the temperature of the fish at that time, you know, through the flight and through the delivery, it changed so much. So by the time that the fish got to the restaurant plate, it was of course off, and we poisoned half of Johannesburg. So I was pretty much out of the fish business quicker than I ever expected. So I realized that I will never go back into the fish business, but I realized during that experience, you see, what I still learned at that early, I was in my early 20s. What I realized at that point You know, I must just take something out of that, and then it'll all be worthwhile. So what I did do, I had some contacts, and what was very prominent in the Cape Town region at that time, everywhere you went, where it was Epping or where it was Mowbray industrial areas or Salt River, where there's fast food caravans all over the place. But and people saying to me, Mike, there's just not enough of them. So what I did do, I had a contact up in Johannesburg, and within 3 or 4 weeks, we were able to put together a mobile kitchen, and we did. So within 4 to 5 weeks, I had 200 fast food caravans. I had a contact with Transnet. I put 200 caravans onto we hired this train in its entirety, and there it was. I had 200 caravans coming to Cape Town, of which I had already sold at that point of time. So this was amazing. So the next morning I woke up, it was about 8:30, 9:30. I was specifically in the news all over the place, and I couldn't understand why. What had happened was the train derailed in the middle of the Karoo, and there were 215 caravans up on its belly, and the media, of course, went moggy. And Leanne, if you could ask me one question, what was the biggest mistake that I'd made? If you can ask that question.
What was the biggest mistake you made, Mike?
Leanne, I had no insurance. So I was out of the caravan business quicker than I went into it. So there again, I learned a great deal from that. And of course, life went on because of these amazing experiences. And I call them amazing because if those things didn't happen to me, I would never have continued to where I wanted to be in life, because I had learned a great deal from those 2 experiences. Of course, there are a few more that came along en route, but eventually I got to a point I just couldn't make any mistakes. But I always embraced them, and I was always grateful for them, and I learned a great deal from them. And those are 2 of a few, but of course they always stand out because they're pretty funny stories. And although they were quite costly, but they were great stories.
They are indeed. Mike, and so when you went down, you've actually been through a phase in your life where you've lost everything. Now, how did you see the light and come back from the 2 that you've shared, but also other experiences?
Well, you know, then sometime after that, and this is still in my early years, my early 20s, and I took another big gamble. I did a deal globally, and you know, all the things were checked out, and I was going to buy the rights of this one of the largest furniture companies in the world. You know, these interchangeable bedrooms that go from a baby bedroom to a teenage bedroom to an adult, and then back to a baby bedroom. And I bought the global rights for Africa, so the Africa rights. And, you know, the big players, the big law firms and the big auditing firms that did all the due diligence, and they said, Mike, you're good to go. So, of course, I transferred the money, and within a 48 period, I lost about 65.5 million rand from a Friday to a Monday. Oof. So, you know, now people can say, well, Mike, it wasn't your fault. Of course it was my fault. I made the decision. You see, early in my life, Leanne, I realized you have to take responsibility for everything thrown at you. In that way, you can get ahead.
Wow.
And of course, I lost everything. And then I kind of, you know, I was in a pretty good position. You know, my car was gone, everything had gone. But I was so damn excited. And I can't tell you why. Because you see, I had so much, but I had nothing. I had nothing around me. I had no assets. I had no things. And that never mattered to me in any event. It still doesn't matter to me. But what I had was, you know, and I lived in a cave up in the cradle of humankind for a while. And I remember I had a bottle of water and 3 oranges. And that's where I started again. And I woke up one morning looking at the skyline, and I realized that, and I looked over Joburg and I said, you know what? This is the first day. I'm so damn excited. I'm coming back. And I realized then, I believed in myself so much, not because I was arrogant, because I knew that I was never going to stop trying. And I've said that before. But I'm going to keep going until I arrive at where I'm going to be in life. And I started my journey from then on. And then, of course, I had the grateful ability to come back to where I wanted to be and to move on in life. But without those experiences, Leanne, I could never have achieved what I set out to achieve in life. And, you know, yeah, and I think those are the key elements about failure. You know, if we're not prepared to fail, let's not become entrepreneurs. because you cannot rise to the occasion if you cannot meet those obstacles en route. And again, here again, many business owners out there right now, there are thousands right now, you're probably listening to me, and many over the last few weeks, because I tell my stories very transparently with passion, because this is the time when we can start learning. It's okay to be where we are right now. It's okay. It's just a matter of time until we come back. But the important thing about going through adversity, or when you're in it, seek out the opportunities. Like right now, adapt, find opportunities, be positive, be transparent. And the most important of all, Leanne, if you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. And if you have integrity, nothing else matters.
Wow. Very profound statement at the end there about integrity, Mike. Absolutely. I know that also all these experiences, being an entrepreneur and working in a small business, have given you such a passion for small business. And you actually formed the NSBC, the National Small Business Chamber. And that is a great success story. How did it come about, and what was the vision behind it?
Yeah. When I got to where I wanted to achieve from a commercial perspective, I sold out my company and to a global company, and I decided then, Mike, I want to do something so different. I want to spend the rest of my life helping others, helping other aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners. First of all, not to go through what I went through, although I find that a pretty great journey that I went through. I know people find that pretty strange to understand, but also because of my experiences, I wanted to really help aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners. And my vision was, when I started the NSBC just on 12 years ago, I had one vision, Leanne. If I could help one small business in one small way every day, then I would be successful. I never realized where we would arrive one day. But, the NSBC was born out of a few key principles. If you're true to yourself and you help others, you'll always be okay. And that's when I decided that the NSBC will only ever be a non-profit organization. Whatever the proceeds were made will come back into the organization to go out there and help more people. So that's how we started. And I remember our first big sponsor we got on board. And I won't mention names, but it's one of the big global brands. And I went to them because we needed sponsorships. And if, you go onto the NSBC homepage now, you'll see all our major partners, big global players. And I remember they said to me, Mike, wow, how can we become a major sponsor? We will be the only ones there, first of all. And they said to me, Mike, how many members have you got? Well, I said, we haven't got one yet. And Mike, how many partners do you have? Well, we don't have one yet. So they said to me, well, Mike, come back in 10 days time and give us a full presentation. We're quite nervous about this, but we like your passion. So I did 10 days later, and I had the board of a major global company, and I stood up in front of them and I said, you know what, I didn't even bring a presentation. I didn't bring a computer. I didn't bring anything. I just brought myself. And I said, you know what, if you and I can help one small business in one small way every day, wouldn't that be amazing? And they looked at each other and they held on for a few seconds and they said, Mike, we're on board. We love that. I didn't promise anything. I didn't know where we were going. But I always knew one thing, Leanne. I always knew that I would do whatever I could to help others. And in that way, I always knew that we would be successful in what we did.
Wow.
And yes, of course, I never realized that we would land up now with 145,000 SMEs growing at right now we're growing at just over 6,500 SMEs per month, which makes us the fastest growing organization of its kind in the world. Not because that's an agenda for us or that's that important to us. It's just a measure of what we're doing well. And of course, people like you and the others in the team, we have an amazing team of people who share the same ideals, who want the same things out of life. And we're all committed to doing that. So I think when you've got that kind of passion, that kind of team, you can achieve anything in life.
Oh, absolutely. The people you surround yourself with is so important. And to the small business owners out there, you can use those skills of your team. If you have really valuable people in your team, get them to give you input on your business. Like you say, Mike, it's such a team effort. And I just love the passion that you exude and just the core. Like if the core is to help others with your product or with your service, then you will be successful. We also know that in order to survive, small businesses have needed to adapt substantially in this amount of time, to innovate and essentially to get creative. As you know, I have a massive passion for creativity and how it can really like boost the problem solving in businesses. But what has often struck me as interesting with creativity is that the most brilliant, the most life-changing solutions are not born when people have all the resources at their disposal, but rather the best, most amazing ideas come when there are restrictions, come when there is adversity. I would be as bold to say that difficulty plus creativity equals opportunity. And what do you think of this statement, Mike? And yeah.
Well, first of all, Leanne, I mean, I think you're the most amazing creative person I probably have ever met, you know, and you've been a major contribution, and I've learned a great deal from that. And I think you're 100% right. I mean, we share a lot of commonality. You know, I'm very creative in a different way to your, but that combined creativity is amazing. And I think that right now, Leanne, if you look at it right now during this pandemic, creativity has to come close to the top. You know, adaptation, finding opportunities, passion, to be calm, to be positive, to be resilient. And if you can combine that with passion and creativity, man, you're going to come out. You know, and I'll share a story with you, and I'll tell that story one day, Leanne, when I put you up there in Durban on your first seminar and you didn't know it. I mean, I'll tell you quickly, guys, it was amazing. You know, just after I met with Leanne, and I didn't, her background was never about platform speaking. And I mean, you'd never think that now if you listen to Leanne on stage. But I mean, some years back, we were sitting on the terrace at the Elangeni in Durban, and we had a big seminar the next morning at the Elangeni of about 1,200 people. And I was first or second up, and I said to Leanne, I'd like you to pop up there and do a seminar on digital and creativity and social media. And then, of course, so at that, you know, Leanne now and again has a one or two glasses of wine, but very seldom. So, of course, we had a few bottles of wine because the nerves walk out there. But she went on, and I tell you what, it was incredibly, her passion and her creativity was enormous. And that's when I really learned about creativity in a massive way, because the combination of positivity and creativity, not only during a time of adversity like it is now for many, but in normal times. And if you can bring in that, because a lot of people think creativity is about designing. Well, creativity, design, as you know, Leanne, you know, is a portion of creativity. But that understanding of what's out there to bring into your business goes far beyond that. So we as a nation now, especially a business owner nation and an entrepreneurial nation right now, we have to dig deep for that creativity and go beyond that, because that's what's going to get us beyond. You know, that's what's going to get us out of that starting block when this pandemic is over. But even now, you know, why not one of us in the audience, or many of us attendees, let us be the next Apple or the next Alibaba or the next Microsoft. Why not? Because you and I, all of us around in this seminar room this morning, going to the afternoon, we had that ability to do that. So bring in that creativity, bring in that positivity. I'd love to tell that story just now, if you allow me, Leanne, about David Mpuchi, because that just brings to mind the kind of creativity that he exuded to me many years ago.
Absolutely. And that's the misconception a lot of people have, is that creativity is art or design or that kind of thing. Creativity at its core is problem solving. That is it. And as small business owners, you need to problem solve right now in ways you never have before, with elements and technology you've never used before. You need to look at your products and your services and see, how can we adapt this to still help people, but with the difficulties we are facing. And I promise you, there's actually such an opportunity here to create something new, life-changing, and mind-blowing. So if you are feeling stuck, I would recommend that all business owners collaborate with other business owners from other sectors. You can even pull in your team. Pull in your team and ask them, brainstorm, what ideas do you have? Mike, I know that the NSBC has had to adapt massively during this pandemic. One of our core elements, one of our core kind of services and functions were revolved around live events. I mean, we were often for massive immersive expos. We host one-on-one interpersonal networking events. All our events had to be postponed, if not cancelled. And that kind of shook us a little bit. But we adopted the creativity and the problem solving to this. Mike, how did the NSBC adapt as a result of the pandemic?
Well, thank you, Leanne. And I think, like we've spoken in the last half an hour, as we realize that this pandemic is going to affect us, we knew that it would affect us positively. And that was a decision that we took as a team. Because why? Yes, we were dominated by breakfast events, sales conferences, expos at these big exhibition centers. And that was 80 to 90% of what we did. Of course, we're not all about events. We've got help centers and publications and all those cool things that we do for our members, of course. But what we did do within a 48-hour period, from going to the largest event in the world for anyone starting a business or building a bigger business at a convention center, became digital and online. And now we will never go back, Leanne, because it's more opportunity. It's 365 days of the year. The event lives on, and it's given us more creativity and opportunity. If you look at our breakfast events, they're going now into networking forums. If you look at the way we operate as a team, but I know you've always been working from home, Leanne, and I mean, for most of you out there who don't know, Leanne is from New York. Leanne, I'll tell you a quick story. Every time I bring Leanne on stage at a major event, I always say all the way from New York. But yeah, we're all working from home. We've adapted. We're using technology. If you asked me 2 months ago, Leanne, to do a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or host a webinar like this, I kind of may have laughed at you a little bit. But every aspect of our business is come out positively. And whatever we do in the future, this is an add-on. Yes, we're going to go back to our live events and then, of course, face-to-face meetings and that. But we're never going to let this go. So what has it given us? It's given us an enormous opportunity to add on to what we're doing well.
Absolutely. And to reach more people. I think a lot of our work was dominated by the main city centers. And now we can reach people in the small little dorpies and even in other countries and throughout Africa. I mean, we've seen attendees from even places like Spain that have watched these webinars. So that's where the opportunity lay. And we didn't know it actually existed to this degree until we tried this new thing. So trying the new things and tackling that fear of failure is they go hand in hand, because it's always scary to try new things and to adapt. Mike, sales has always been a big thing for you. I remember you always say, to be a star, you must make it rain. And to be a rainmaker in a company is such a big thing. And I know there's a lot of businesses